Hello, all. Welcome to this event. My name is Sujit. I'll be your host today, and we have Anisha today with us. More about her later, but let's talk about Synapse QA first. Uh, so, we basically are a writing community, and we started off as a writing community, but we are now more towards creating and sharing ideas, creative ideas for people to know different aspects of testing and in general technology. So we basically are a free platform. We connect and find people who wants to who are interested in writing and curating content. So we started off in March to 2020, and we have now 30 plus talents on board, and we have hosted two global events as of now, and one meetup. We have started one meetup as a in parallel with studying, in parallel with learning series, and we have partnered with communities uh, for five global testing conferences. Uh, Apart from that, this event is basically about we feel that writing is a strong form of expression, but it's often less celebrated. So super reads is here to bring more writers to the mainstream, to share their knowledge with the community. And it's a global write-a-thon with a review panel from leaders and experts. And if you can see our website, we have already 12 finalists for this year, and we are going strong with other events also. So that was about Synapse QA. Today our host is Anisha Garg. Anisha has a overall 8 years of experience, and she's currently working in Red Hat. She's passionate about quality engineering, and she has worked with multiple test automation tools and continue to explore more. Her recent learnings have been on testing in ML, machine learning, and she's a avid speaker in multiple tech conferences. So topics related to software engineering, software quality engineering. And Fun fact, she's a solo traveler, but until the pandemic hit, so now I think she shares her stories on YouTube and on Medium. So let's welcome Anisha. Anisha, over to you.
Thanks, Sujit, for the introduction. And let me start by sharing my screen. Okay, can you all see my screen?
Yes, we can.
I am assuming that my screen is visible.
Yeah, we can see your screen, Anisha.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so hello everyone. I am Anisha Narang, and I welcome you all to the session Quality Engineering and the Open Road. I am currently working as a principal software quality engineer at Red Hat. I've been with Red Hat for over 8 years now, and a little about me. Once again, I've been here for 8 years, spoken at multiple tech conferences. I've been an active member of the women's leadership community India at Red Hat, and other than work, I've been quite an explorer in different areas. And until the pandemic hit, I was quite a bit of a solo traveler, but 2020 did give me enough time to compile some of my travel stories and put them together on YouTube. And I started a YouTube channel. Link to one of my travel vlogs is there in the slides at the bottom. But I would definitely need your attention for the next few minutes while I'm talking and not to go watch my travel vlogs right away. So let's get started and take a look at the agenda for today. All right. So, what we are going to be talking about today is we will be expanding on the acronym OPEN and see how quality engineering works well with that. We'll be talking a couple of about the open source tools and technologies that we use in quality engineering, how quality engineering has evolved over the years, what are the emerging trends that we see in software testing, are there any new opportunities that we see in software testing. At the end, what I promise you is that you will have a different perspective about software testing. You will know what are the different learning opportunities in quality engineering with open source. How can a career in test engineering span out with open source tools and technologies? So quality, everyone appreciates quality work, but let alone QE team cannot do the magic. Quality is everyone's responsibility. Quality is the outcome of the combined effort of the entire team. Beep beep, testing is useless, all my code is perfect is something that might come in from a developer mindset, but it can cause or hurt a project in multiple ways. The goal of softwares and of software testers and developers is the same, which is to provide a quality product to the stakeholders, but each of them takes a different route to achieve the same goal. So what do we need? We need that it's important that we appreciate or we understand the conflicts or be more comfortable with the conflicts and try to work together in the constructive way in the interest of the project, right? All right, so highlighting a little bit more on another aspect, which is called as the tradable quality hypothesis. Now, whenever we look at an application, what the effectiveness and the pleasantness of the user interface of a particular application is termed as the external quality. That is something that can be perceived by the user. But internal quality of a system is more of a hidden aspect. Now, I can't tell just by using an application whether its internals are constructed well or not. Now, when somebody trades for building features more than focusing on the design quality of the application, they are applying tradable quality hypothesis to the internal quality of the application. Now, let me give you a real example that I faced as a part of my team to bring more emphasis on how internal quality makes a difference. So we were working on a project, we were building an entirely new project. And as a QE team, as being a part of the QE team, we did keep on bringing to the table that, the internal design of the system is not so strong and we do need to pay more attention to it. But the team decided to keep moving in a fast pace, and we kept on applying band-aids to the project in order to deliver more and more features to the project to meet the stakeholder needs, right? And eventually, we reached a point where there was a lot of technical debt in the system. And at that point, as a team with a lot of stakeholder discussions, the program manager discussions, we had to take the decision that we need to pivot into a new direction entirely and throw away whatever we have. So reducing internal quality eventually slows us down. No matter that it might give you a short-term speed up if you compromise on the design or the internal quality of an application, but in the long term, it will eventually slow you down. So if you are an engineer on the team or a quality engineer on the team, and you notice any time that the internal quality of an application is being compromised, do not hesitate to raise your voice and bring that to the table for everybody in the team, because that's what makes a difference. All right, so let's move to the open road and broaden our horizons and know how awesome it is to have a career in software quality engineering. Okay, so the first aspect of it, which is open source tools and technologies. Open source tools and technologies go hand in hand with quality engineering, as do the development, right? So the developers use open source tools and technologies to build user experience, wherein the testers use the same to simulate the user experience via code. Now, needless to say, highlight some of the most popular open source tools that are widely used. Selenium is one of the most popular open source testing tool for web applications. Being compatible with a lot of programming languages, testing frameworks, browsers, and operating systems, Selenium is an awesome automation tool for web applications. It has language bindings available for Java, Python, JavaScript, Ruby, you name it, and you have it. If you're not in favor of using the plain Python, plain Selenium, you could also use the wrapper, which is web application testing in Water, which is web application testing in Ruby. It is a lightweight tool, and you can write your test scripts in Ruby using Water. Similarly, Protractor is another one for JavaScript. However, it is discontinued now. The last release was in Feb 2020, and fairly the new ones in the market these days are WebDriver IO and Cypress, right? So there are a lot of tools and tools that you can use to automate your web applications that you might need. Touching upon another aspect, which is Cucumber is open source tool again, which is based in the concept of behavioral driven development. It allows you to write your test cases in the Gherkin syntax of given, when, and then. At the start, it's very promising. It looks very promising to be able to write your test cases in the given, when, then syntax, and they look so readable. But in the long term, it can become an overhead to the project. So, and some of the other similar ones that you might want to take a look at, the other frameworks that might come in handy could be Jasmine, Mocha, RSpec, and the other one. So one of the recent ones that I've recently come across is Lemon Cheesecake. So if you're using Selenium Python, or if you're using Python and you're looking for a test framework, then Lemon Cheesecake is something that I've discovered recently, and it's a pretty promising tool, along with PyTest. And so I highly recommend using that if you haven't come across it. And it can be used for UI or API tests as and when you want. All right, so talking of open source tools and technologies and test automation in general, what is it that I really would want to highlight is the testing pyramid. So testing pyramid is a concept that was introduced by Mike Cohen in one of his articles. The link to the article is introduced there. So now what is he trying to say? He tries to say that have the maximum number of the unit tests, slightly lesser number of the service tests or the tests of the API layer, and the minimum number of the UI tests. So the message here is that you need to avoid the ice cream cone. So it shouldn't be the reverse, right? You shouldn't be ending up with maximum number of UI tests, lesser number of API, and the minimum number of the unit tests, right? In this case, your tests will become very slow and it will be difficult to manage, right? So what are the two key points that we have? What are the two key takeaways that we have, which is write tests with different granularity. Whenever you're building a test automation suite, you need to consider that you're writing your tests with different granularity. The more high level you get, the fewer tests you should have. So more integration, lesser number of tests. More isolation is the more number of tests, right? So this is a message that we all want to take back, which is to avoid the ice cream cone. Touching upon another aspect is load testing. It's more of a performance testing that simulates the real world load. Load test only when you want to determine how many users your system can actually handle. Whenever you're deciding the load for your application, you need to make sure that it's in sync with the real users that your application would be used by. Let's say you're building an application that would barely be used by 200 to 300 people. Let's say an internal application for your organization. And when you're doing a load testing for that application, you try to apply, you send 1,000 users load. So that's kind of not relevant and it does not make sense. So always make sure that you decide on the load, on the user load according to the real users, the number of real users who would be using that particular application. Highlighting a little bit on some of the common load testing open source tools. Jmeter, pretty popular. self-explanatory Java application, the most commonly used tool for load testing or API testing. It's a fully featured test IDE that allows you to do everything. It allows you to use the desktop, the dashboard to write your tests. Another one that I recently discovered was Locus. It's a Python-based test framework. The best part about Locust is that it allows you to define user behavior with Python code, right? And you do not have to worry about the bloated XMLs. It allows you to coordinate very well with your peer engineers to write the load tests. You can coordinate very well, collaborate very well using Git. You don't really have to worry about this the big XML file. No clunky UIs. You can define the user behavior in Python code. So I personally used it. I had a hands-on experience, and I think it's pretty much a promising tool. So if that's something that you would want to explore, then it's pretty nice to start your journey in the world of load testing. Gatling is another popular tool that I've used. I haven't had a chance to use it hands-on, but I think it integrates very well with your development pipeline. And there might be a steep learning curve if you're planning to use Gatling because it has its own DSL. All right, so coming on to the next aspect, progressive. So quality engineering has evolved a lot over the years, and it encapsulates a much broader scope than just manual testing as it was 10 to 15 years ago. There has been a workforce transformation. Now, if you look at the number of job opportunities, there are not many job opportunities for manual testers anymore, right? We've evolved to a point where test automation is an integral part of the QE workflow. We automate all the repetitive steps that we want, right? Adoption of CI, the automated tests that we write are a part of the deployment pipeline. I'm going to throw some more light on the CI/CD pipeline in the next slide as well. There has been a shift in culture. QE is not at the fag end of the software development lifecycle anymore. QEs have started to participate in the design and have started to participate right from the design and the planning phase of different projects. And the most important thing is that the QEs need to embrace themselves at par with developers. Right? We all together need to bring the shift in culture, though it's coming in, but we still need to push harder to bring in the shift in culture. Okay, so CI/CD Jenkins pipeline, it's fairly a new concept. This also touches upon when we talk about the learning opportunities available for QEs. We do have a lot of learning opportunities, so this one can be one of them. So continuous delivery pipeline is an automated expression of your process for getting software from the version control right through to your users and customers. It's more about modeling the simple to complex delivery pipelines as code, right? Back in the days, we would, earlier when we started with, automating adding our test cases or adding our test automation to Jenkins, we would usually use the UI dashboard. But Jenkins pipelines is more of the preferred way now. So Jenkins pipeline is typically written into a text file, and that text file is called as the Jenkins file. On the right, you can see that there's a sample syntax for a Jenkins file. There are two different types of syntaxes that can be used. One is a scripted and another is a declarative. Declarative is the more recent one and the recommended way of writing your pipeline. So just to go about in flow on each of these. So you can specify the agent on whichever node you would want to run your test cases or maybe run your build, and you can define the stages of a deployment pipeline. In a typical deployment pipeline, the stages could be build, test, deploy, and each of the steps could be mentioned based on however you would want to go into your setup and stages and things like that. And if you are building an explicitly just a testing pipeline, right? Let's say you're just setting up a test automation deployment pipeline, then your preferred stages could just be setup and test execution. and it would save you a lot of time. Let's say in case of migrations and things like that, you don't have to really worry about your job configurations. These things can be kept in the version control systems like Git, and you can simply use them as and when you want, refer them, and they more offer you more opportunities to collaborate with developers as well. All right, so talking a little bit on the emerging trends. What are the emerging trends in software quality engineering these days? Security testing, testing infrastructure as a service. I'm sure you must have heard about browser stack and things like that, and services like those. Testing in AI ML, testing with containers. Performance engineering, performance testing. We, however, do performance testing, but the results that we get as a part of the performance testing are can be used by the developers to improve on things like the page speed, the responsiveness of the application. So performance engineering is definitely much, much greater than performance testing. Agile and DevOps, we slightly touched upon. To name a few, blockchain testing, IoT testing, mobile test automation. So if you had to look at the opportunities that one can have in their career as a test engineer, there are ample of them. And then you can decide what opportunities you would want to grab as and when you want to decide to have more learnings in your life. To throw some light on just a few of the emerging trends, security testing, it's more of a testing technique to determine if an information system protects data and maintains functionality as intended. I'm sure you all must have heard about the recent security vulnerability Log4j that has come up recently, so it has become an important aspect now. It has been always, but yeah, this is like the burning topic for the past few days. So just highlighting a little bit on OWASP Top 10. OWASP is the Open Web Application Security Project. So Top 10, it's more of a standard awareness document that highlights the most common, the most critical security risks to web applications like injection, broken authentication, and cross-site scripting. So if you're interested to know more about the OWASP Top 10 project, you can definitely check out the link at the bottom of the slide. Testing with containers. So I remember when I started my journey as a software tester, we used to have separate workstations that you would test for. That definitely involved more time setting up an entire new workstation for testing an application, as well as it was more resources were involved, right? And then we gradually moved on to using virtual machines, and now we're using containers. So we've come a long way with that. Just to give you an overview on containerization is a process that isolates an application in its own operating environment. It's much lighter and faster than a virtual machine. In order to test with the Docker container, what you need is just a Docker file wherein you specify, what all maybe let's just say the OS that you want your application to run on, or the project dependencies. It's more of a text file that you just compile, and you can run your test cases as per your need inside a Docker container. You can also try running Selenium with Podman. There are also standalone containers for Selenium that contain both the Selenium WebDriver and the browser itself. So it kind of reduces your effort to add in the required dependencies that you would want for your test to execute. All right, so highlighting a little bit on testing in AI/ML versus standard testing. So this has been one of my recent learnings and recent areas where I've started exploring. So a typical software testing suite would include unit tests, regression tests, integration tests, functional tests. But the way we test in a machine learning model is way different. So in a standard software, the way we test applications traditionally is more like that we verify or we match the actual versus the expected behavior. But in a machine learning model, it's not the case. in a machine learning model, how we do it, we have large sets of data with the desired behavior that is used to train a machine learning model, and then we need to check if that trained model is giving us the consistent outputs or not. So if you look closely at the diagram on the right, it shows the different phases that are involved in a machine learning model, and what and how a data what are the different stages involved in a data pipeline, right? So we have stages like data ingestion, data cleaning, model training, model output. You can also see that there are validation marks at each of them. So we do need to do data validation in machine learning. It's not something which is optional. So the cliche garbage in, garbage out is very popular in machine learning. So if we do not have, if the data that we use to train our model is not validated, then our predictions will not be accurate. So it holds true in the context of machine learning. And that is why data validation is imperative and not optional. We do need to make sure that at the stages of data ingestion and data cleaning, we do the data validations. One of the libraries that is most commonly used is Great Expectations for that. These can be categorized as pre-trained tests. It can be divided into two, pre-trained tests and the post-trained tests. So the pre-trained test is the one that we do before we train the model, at the data ingestion and the data cleaning stages. Now, the post-train tests come into the picture after the model has been trained. At this point, we need to identify the accuracy of our model. We need to make sure that if the results that we are getting as a part of the trained model are correct or not. There are a couple of concepts that one would want to learn if we are talking about post-train tests, like test train split. What is the data that we would be using? For the data that we used for training the model should not be same as the data that we're using for testing the model. So post-train data, we need to have a different data set altogether. We need to be aware about a few metrics and have a better understanding of the metrics like F1 score, recall, and precision and accuracy. So these are some of the things that one might want to learn if they are thinking to start their journey with post-train tests. So it's more about identifying the accuracy of your trained model. So this is just a screenshot. So I recently wrote a blog on Medium about testing and machine learning. What was the learning curve that I took to get started in that journey? And I've put together some of the learnings there. And if you're interested, you can check out the two blogs. I've written two blogs. This is just a little screenshot from the first one that I wrote, which kind of gives you an overview of what I just spoke about. All right, so coming on to new opportunities. So there is no dearth of learning opportunities in the domain of software quality engineering. So there are always two kinds of test engineers, right? One can be the BizOps person or the DevOps person. Somebody might have more inclination towards business, analysis, planning, and they might be much better at that. If anybody is not interested at any point in time in their career, if they feel that they do not want to go the standard career path in test engineering, they always have parallel career options open for themselves. They can move into a role of being a business analyst, a program manager if they're more on the BizOps side, and they can decide to move into another role like DevOps or maybe the developer role if they're more comfortable with code and if they love coding a lot. So there are always parallel career options open for you, and I think it's an amazing thing to have parallel career options open for you. And I think the message that I really want to put out with this slide is that it's that a career in test engineering is definitely a fruitful and a challenging job. So, and you definitely have a lot of learning opportunities in there. So I would also like to share a Google Trend analysis that we did with open source tools versus proprietary tools, and it shows that open source tools are more searched for, um, or more used by two people than the proprietary tools. So open source tools and technologies and quality engineering go very well hand in hand, and there are a lot of learning opportunities for anybody who is starting a career in test engineering. And I think so. Software testing is, usually not the first choice for fresh graduates right out of college, because they think that it might not. Yeah, it's not that promising, or maybe they do not have a lot of learning opportunities there. But I just want to emphasize that there is a lot to learn, and there is no dearth of learning opportunities in software quality engineering. So, and yeah, as a concluding slide or something, in addition, I would definitely want to add that, people also say that, being in quality engineering, I might not have a lot of options, or I might not have a lot of opportunities to be a part of conferences or meetups, or maybe do a lot of certifications and upgrade my skills, upskill myself. But that's not true as well. There are a lot of conferences and meetups that you can be a part of. Some of the common ones are Selenium Con, Google Test Automation Conference, Agile Testing Days, Ministry of Testing meetups, DevConf, and others. There are also a lot of conferences which do have a testing or a software quality engineering track um, in in the conferences. So you can definitely, if you are touching upon any aspect of a technology and doing testing on that side, then definitely you have an opportunity to be a part of that conference, or maybe learn what's going on in that area, because software testing is definitely an integral part of the software development lifecycle. And to name a few certifications, the basic ones, which is ISTQB, ISTQB advanced level. I had a chance to do my RHCSA and RHCE to have more ideas on system administration. So certifications are always open for you, whichever you would want to go and learn. How much capacity how much you want to learn is totally up to you. And a lot of Selenium certifications are there, and a couple of other certifications. You can even go and explore some of the DevOps, let's say DevOps certification that are there, and any of the cloud technologies that you're more interested in. So it's totally up to you. And with that, I would like to open for questions, and that's my Twitter handle at the bottom of the slide. So if you're interested in sharing any feedback or any comments for my session, or ask any questions, stay in touch, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter, and I'm open for questions now. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Anisha, for the session. It was indeed informative. We have a couple of questions here. Mm, So, how do you manage uh, from information overload from learning various tools and attending various conferences? So, it's more of a management question, like how do you manage your information overload when you attend these conferences or like learning these various tools?
Well, definitely, I think it is a very tricky question, and I think all the things that I have shared in my slide has been from my personal experience, from my personal learning curves, and it's it can get load, like the load can be too much, but I think it's just about how you manage and how passionate you are about learning new tools and technologies. I'm more of an explorer, um, in technology as well as in real life. So I think that's how I like it. And if I think if I keep doing the same thing for a longer time, or maybe keep using the same tool for a longer time, I kind of feel that, maybe I'm not growing, or maybe I'm not learning enough. So I think keeping yourself engaged in learning is the key there, and upgrading yourself with what's going on in the market.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that, Anisha. We have another question. How do you keep management and others to not want to jump on the next new shiny tool? So this one is more towards like when you select a tool. So how do you justify or how do you quantify the use of this new tool to the management without them jumping on, why do you want to use this new tool? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting question, and I've been in that spot a couple of times whenever I've brought in a new tool to the table and introduced it to the team. Like Locust was one of my recent, in fact, so was lemon cheesecake. So I think the idea is to spend some time doing a POC. When we say doing a POC is to have a very strategic vision on the project that you're trying to put it across for, and take the little bit of each of those complicated scenarios that you can think of, and try to do a POC or try to figure out the implementation on that note. So when I'm able to do most of the things, most of the complicated problems that I can foresee in a project, and as a tester, I think as a good tester, it's really important for us to be able to think out of the box, think of the critical scenarios. When I'm able to do a POC for those, then I take it forward to the team and to the management that this is what this is a new tool that I've discovered, and this is how it looks like, and it looks pretty promising. The results are great, so I think maybe we should give it a try. And if there is capacity, if it's more like we're starting on a new project or we are not really tied up um, by timelines, I think the management has agreed. And one of the other things that I've also made sure that I do is, so the time that I spend in learning or doing the POC, I make sure that I do knowledge sharing proactively with my team members so that everybody gets up to speed and there is no slowness in the team that comes up because we are adopting a new tool.
Okay. Thank you, Anisha. So this one is from Vinod. He says, "Amazing session, Anisha. Indeed. So please share your thoughts on baking in performance test as a part of CI/CD, and there is a lot of buzz around this. And what are your thoughts on this?"
Um, I think performance test is not something that should be a part of your existing deployment pipeline. Uh, or they are not something that they should be run every time on every deployment, because its performance would usually, like, there can be a change in performance only when the resources have changed or something on the infrastructure has changed. So I think it's very subjective to the project and to the application that we are using, on how we should incorporate the performance test as a part of CI/CD. I think it's pretty subjective to the project and the application.
Okay, we have another question. It's from Bharat. He says that it's a great session. Do you think testers must need to learn AI/ML? Will this have any impact on testing one's career?
Um, Thank you for the question, Bharat. It's not something that one needs to learn. It's just an area that's evolving and it's upcoming. It's I don't see that not learning testing, and it's more like adding a skill to your resume. It's like UI testing and API testing and testing in AI/ML. Or it can be just like only load testing, but you do not know API testing. So I think it's entirely a different skill set. It requires a lot of reading and understanding to go through, if you are wanting to start that, and it's not as simple as the other aspects of testing. So probably I don't see that it will hamper the career. It's more, it if you are interested in learning that, I think the blogs that I've written can be a good head start for you, because I also started from scratch, and I've shared most of the things there on what one needs to know and how we start. And but to put an answer on would it impact a career, your career in the future, I don't think so. It's an additional skill that you can add or not add.
Okay, thanks,
Totally up to
Anisha.
you.
Next question is based on your experience with so far, what is the most challenging thing with which team struggles the most and why, and how to fix the same?
Okay. What is the most challenging thing with which teams struggle the most and why? Well, I think it depends totally on project to project. One of them can also be, you know, convincing the team that testing is valuable. That can also, you can start right from there. Or maybe making or convincing the team that the test application that we are testing at the moment is not up to the mark, and all the UI tests that you see are passing because we added a lot of sleeps. So you need to really work hard on improving the performance of your application. I think the challenges can be as small as this, and as big as having team collaborations, and improving more on the dev QE collaboration, bridging the gap between developers and quality engineers. I don't know if you have a specific question. Maybe I can try answering that, but I don't really see one. But yeah, these are like some of the common struggles that every quality engineer on every second team has faced, and we all must have known those.
Yep. Indeed, that's true. Actually, it's. Do we have more questions? So this one is more towards resources for I think Ramona is asking like she needs to come up with a matrix and or KPI. Do you have any good resource and what are your thoughts on this? Okay.
Okay. Um, this is a good question. So I don't really have a lot to add on the metrics, but it's something that a lot of the management leadership wants to see. They care about the quality index is what we usually call it on. So I think the simplest way that you can start with is probably, if you're not I don't know of any such tools that allow you to do that, but just to start with the basics, maybe you can just start with an Excel sheet and try to come up with the metrics on the different runs, the different test runs, the number of tests that passed, the number of tests that failed, if there were any recurrent, and maybe design, come up with a pattern on any of the recurrent failures that you encounter, and if there were any causes. And then after uh, after maybe a month or a quarter of metrics that you've collected, maybe you can try to make some sense out of that data. um, Whatever your leadership might be looking at, if there are any problems to solve at that moment, then maybe those, or anything on that note.
Okay. Thank you, Anisha. I think we don't have much questions now. We have answered all of those. Thank you so much for your time, Anisha. Uh, I think let's. I would like to thank also the sponsors, our sponsors like Apply Tools, Lambda Test, Test Project, Nuke Test, Test Sigma. So thank you for sponsoring Synapse QA and this event. Uh, if do anyone has any questions before we end this session? Okay, it's more of feedback. If nothing, then thank you all for joining today and hope to see you in the next session.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being such an amazing audience and for asking questions. Thank you. Thanks, Sujit. Thanks, Nitin, for
Thanks.
organizing this.